Hello, and welcome to ISI Insiders, the flagship podcast of continuing resolutions. Here on ISI Insiders, we had a chance to go inside of ISI, that is the Information Sciences Institute, the famed and now 50-year-old organization, to meet some of these ISI Insiders. These are the folks from across the Institute doing a range of crazy cool tech and science work, and I aim to better understand their what, their how, and their why. That is, what they're doing, how they came to be doing it, and why. With their ability to go anywhere else, why are they here working on this right now, and why might you care? Hi, I'm Adam Russell. I'm the director of the AI division at the University of Southern California's Information Sciences Institute, or ISI, and I'm your podcast host. I'll be serving as your virtual guide as we talk to some ISI insiders, all to test my hypothesis that by better understanding this, by better humanizing the people who are doing the actual work, the work that we hear about in the media or that appears names on publications or talks, well, we might get a better sense of where things might be headed, or at least where these folks think those things might be headed, as well as where they think we should go and how we might get there. So my guest today is Federico Spedalieri. Did I do okay?
You did great.
All right. Well, he is, in addition to being understanding about my apparently not terrible ability to pronounce his last name, is also the managing director of the Quantum Initiative. Federico has been at ISI since 2010. And if you, like me, are as curious and also confused about quantum, boy, do we have a treat for you today. He has his PhD in physics from the California Institute of Technology, and he was previously at this other university in Los Angeles, something called UCLA.
Yeah, there's something there.
Down the road. Yeah, that's right. But equally interesting. So he's been part of the USC Lockheed Martin Quantum Computing Center, and he's been working with the D-Wave 1 quantum processor that we actually have at ISI. I look forward to sort of hearing more about that. Let's dig into the background. Federico, welcome to ISI Insiders.
Thank you for having me, Adam.
Okay, so Federico, quantum's kind of crazy. So I suspect to some degree you can tolerate craziness. Let's start with this crazy. I want you to go back in time, and I want to sit here and hear you explain to your 12-year-old, maybe 14-year-old self what you're doing today and why.
Okay, so what I will say to myself, 12 years old, will be something like, well, when you look at the world at the lower scale of subatomic particles, things are completely crazy and different. So the world is completely different from whatever you can imagine. And what we're doing today, instead of just looking at that and saying, oh, that's just strange, we're trying to take advantage of it and use it to process information and do certain tasks that we couldn't do otherwise with the classical physics that rules our scale. I don't know if I would understand it at 12 years old, but that's probably the closest I can get.
Well, let's pull that thread a little bit. Have you always sort of been interested in this question? Maybe not necessarily quantum, but physics, how the world works. So is there sort of a straight line between you at 12 and what you're doing now, or did you take a really interesting right turn at some point?
I think like my 12-year-old will ask me why I'm not doing what he wanted to do at that point, which will be being a fighter pilot, right? So I wanted to be a fighter pilot. My dad was in the Air Force in Argentina. I grew up in bases and around planes all the time, and that I wanted to do that. Mm-hmm. And then at some point, I started learning a little bit about physics and science and the fact that you can understand the world. I will find books at home that will explain things, and I found it very interesting. Mm-hmm. And I guess, one thing that I was thinking was kind of like a break. Third year of high school in Argentina, we have a physics class. The teacher comes in and writes in the board, F equals m times A. Force is equals mass times acceleration. And it just blew my mind, because it's like, you had all these ideas of like, well, force is you push something, acceleration, how things move. Suddenly they're connected by a formula. And that kind of like opened up everything. And then everything can be explained, and there are connections, and then there are formulas that tell you how to predict certain things. So it was, to me, mind-blowing, right? So at some point, I decided, well, I don't want to be a fighter pilot. I love flying. I mean, I have a pilot's license. I haven't
Oh,
flown in a
you
while.
still fly?
But
Okay.
yeah, I haven't flown in a while, but I love doing it. But I realized, yeah, I mean, science, learning these things, this is something that I can spend time, and to me, it's just fun.
Did it? Yeah, no. So I get the F equals ma and the power of the complexity that we observe can be reduced to some sense, or at least explained there. But all that stuff goes wrong at the quantum level, right? Doesn't it? Isn't that the point? Is it doesn't work at that level?
Yeah,
Yeah. So how did you get past that?
Well,
And
that's the fun thing, right? So you start reading about the history of physics and science and like the two big revolutions of the 20th century, like relativity and quantum. And I think it's funny because I think probably every physics student goes through this stage of like rejection of quantum mechanics, that this cannot be right. I mean, there's something here. I mean, you're tricking me. You're like lying to me. This doesn't make any sense. I mean, Einstein went to his dad thinking that we're missing something. This cannot be the
God
way
doesn't play dice, right?
nature
God,
is. Yes. And then at some point, you accept it because, well, it works. You go to the lab, you do this like weird calculations in these Hilbert spaces, and they tell you like, oh, you're going to measure this with this probability. You go to the lab and you measure it. I mean, there's one quantity is called the anomalous gyromagnetic factor for the electron. That, I mean, it's not just quantum mechanics, it's quantum field theory. But so the basic theory predicts that it should be 2. And then there is some corrections because of quantum mechanics and field theory that says, well, there's some decimals. They have calculated those decimals up to like the 10th place. And you go measure it, and you measure every single one of them.
And it's there.
And it's amazing.
In 5 to 10 years from now, if your work continues along these lines, like where do you think we're going to be in quantum computing? What do you expect there to be in the world?
Expect will be like too strong of a word, but
Okay.
Hope maybe.
An impossible question.
Yeah, that we have, that is common to have in many applications, instances where we know, at least today, the best way to solve that problem is to use a quantum device, right? Because we've tested, we may not have a proof that there isn't a classical algorithm or some weird classical computing technology that could do it better. But right now, I mean, since quantum essentially processes and represents the information a completely different way for certain applications, well, we might find that this is an amazing heuristic for this, right? We kind of lucked into it in some sense, right? So we did research and we figured out that it works here. And what I will be super excited if we are already at the point where we have these fault-tolerant quantum computers and we're really trying to understand features of nature at the level that once we understand it, that changes the world. As I mentioned before, the superconductor at room temperature, right? So that now you don't lose energy when you're moving electricity anywhere because you got rid of the resistance. We understand how photosynthesis works, right? So how to be efficient in capturing solar energy and transforming it into energy. So to me, like the moment that we're living in quantum, it's extremely exciting. I mean, the fact that I lost track of the number of companies that are building quantum devices, I mean, I still like sometimes think like this cannot be real, but we're here.
That's awesome. All right. Well, yeah, stick around, certainly. Because one, I want you to see it, but two, we're going to need you to help us navigate this. And actually, a question I like to ask is, with that increased understanding, with the convergence of these technologies, we're heading into a world of really very hard to predict complexity in essentially all of our systems. In your experience, if you could talk about this, like let's say have someone either alive or dead over for dinner and ask them some questions about sort of how should we think about this, the next 5 to 10 years or what's happening at the moment, who would you have at dinner and why?
I think people that I would like that their visions, but more about the science, I guess. I mean, and kind of like heroes of mine are Carl Sagan and Isaac Asimov, right? So I read anything that Asimov kind of wrote. I was trying to read, and actually watching the series Cosmos as a 9-year-old in Argentina was another one of those like open your mind, like there's something bigger out there. And Carl Sagan was the messenger there. And he also, I mean, he did so many things, and he touched many areas in science that I really like you can see like the childish excitement when he was telling you things about how the world works, and that is contagious. And when I find somebody that has that energy, I like to talk to them about anything, because you will get something out of it.
No, it's true. It feels like they're just plugged in to something
Yeah.
like a bigger generation. It reminds me, my 8-year-old is getting into poetry at school and brought home this very simple poem by a poet named Mary Oliver, which captures well. It said, "Instructions for living life: pay attention, be astounded, tell about it." And it's sort of like I immediately thought of Carl Sagan actually when she brought that home, right? Speaking of poetry, and taking a left turn as we do on this podcast, do you have any hobbies that you think somehow contribute to your work in quantum?
Well, I don't know, because again, as we're saying, like quantum is so alien from our normal experience that
Right.
it's hard for me to make a connection. I mean, I like music. I play a little bit of the guitar. Actually, I own more instruments than I know how to play. Just like to have instruments. I have like a saxophone that I never played, but
You don't know how to play it, but you just
no, I don't know how to play. But I mean, I have a guitar. I play a little bit of guitar. I have a piano. I play a little bit of piano. I have a clarinet. I play a little bit of clarinet, right? But I kind of like, and I also always have the fantasy that I'm gonna have time to sit down and learn all these instruments anyway.
Yeah.
But then, I mean, I guess other hobbies is more to disconnect a little bit, to get my mind. So one thing that I do is I volunteer as coach and referee for youth soccer. I coach my son's team, and just going out there, also refereeing, just running and thinking about the game. And like, it's like an hour that my mind just turns off, and I'm just there, and it's awesome.
Interesting. Yeah. I thought you were going to say, like, I borrow the D-Wave and I start computing the different plays that we can run through as the kids are.
I haven't thought about that yet.
Oh, yeah. There you go. So again, when you crack the code, yeah, let me know. And off we are with our next startup. Question about your general interest in some sense. I'm curious if you had a podcast, what would it be about?
Well, I like science, and I would really love for people to really understand it more and kind of demystify it a little bit. I feel that people hear that, I mean, I tell them that I'm a scientist and I do this, and most of the time immediately it's like, okay, it's not somebody I can relate to. And it's not like that. I mean, there are many things in science. I mean, it's our job as scientists to be able to tell everybody more or less what we're trying to do and give them an idea. Of course, I'm not going to explain Hilbert spaces to people to tell them what I do, but communicating that so that more people understand what is possible with science, what is not, what is completely crazy, what is completely crazy that is good because you think about trying to build something that doesn't exist, and what is completely crazy because that's impossible, right? And some people are telling you that they can do it. I think essentially democratizing more science knowledge, that'll be something that I would like to do.
Right. I agree, obviously, because we have a podcast here where we're trying to sort of humanize the scientists, right? Federico does quantum. Okay, but Federico does quantum and does it well and does it for these reasons. One challenge sometimes is when you humanize scientists, people also realize, well, wait a minute, that means scientists are fallible, right? That means science can be wrong. It means scientists can make mistakes. I think
that's the beauty of science.
Well, I totally agree, and I think that's part of the problem is scientists haven't embraced that enough. And so, like, yes, exactly, right. We are fallible, and we do make mistakes. The difference is that we can self-correct, right? Because we test these things. Yeah.
Yes, that to me, it's like almost the defining property of good science is the fact that, well, you think about this, this is your interpretation, but it can be wrong. And actually, if somebody comes and proves it to me, you're wrong here and here, I'm happy because I learned something, right? And that's what I want to do every day, right? Learn something new. And to me, I'm never married to anything that I do, like, or any result that I have. And like, if somebody comes and tells me I don't believe you, like, okay, what are your reasons? Like, maybe you're right. I mean, so that's part of my job.
What have you been most wrong about with quantum? Again, strong opinion, slightly held. Like, what was the in your experience, what was the thing that you just sort of knew was going to be true about this area that turned out not to be true?
I don't know if I knew it had to be true, but I guess when I started in quantum, and it wasn't just me, but to have this idea that to really build a quantum device, you first need to build the perfect one qubit and the other qubit and be perfect at how they interact. And then you're going to scale it and build a bigger one. And then that turned out to lead us nowhere. And that was one of the winters of quantum when people realized, like, oh, it's hard to build like two qubits interacting. So how are we going to build a big thing? And then some people decide, well, we just need to start, right? And they started building bigger things and learning on the go, right? So you're going to run into problems that you didn't know, but you're only going to find them by doing it. So I think that catalyzed a little bit of the effort in quantum of people like going outside, if you want, of academia, trying to do everything in the lab very perfect as possible, and kind of like taking that leap of faith of saying we're going to start building systems and learning from them instead of waiting to have like all the theory and everything for the perfect thing and then start building it. So I guess, I mean, I was more of the idea, oh, first we're going to do it in the lab, and then eventually we're going to transition it. And the best way was to just start building them, right? Well, the companies like D-Wave, I mean, they kind of took that route early on. They just started building things, building systems that, I mean, you start with 2 qubits, then 4, then 8. I mean, it's not world shattering, right? But you learn along the way. And then other companies realize, yeah, you can learn by, we cannot wait until like everything is solved in the lab to then start building it. We need to do it.
That's really interesting. And it actually speaks to something I've been thinking a lot about in terms of how do you build a team, an organization, a company that has what I call high LQ or learning quotient, right? That you have to be able to build and place these systems that allow you to learn as you experiment, as you know, as things fail. But my sense is, it is amazing what you can discover when you are just get started and you learn from that process. Okay, moment of truth, Federico. Do you have a good quantum joke?
Not a good quantum joke. I can do a joke about, I mean, I'm a physicist. We usually make jokes about mathematicians.
I was going to say,
I respect mathematicians. And the one that I always remember is like two physicists are in a balloon flying, and they realize they're completely lost, and they're looking around, and then they see down there like a lonely tree and a guy sitting under it, like just deep in thought. So they go down and start, hey, guy doesn't, hey, up here. And then the guy looks up, yes. Can you tell us where we are? And the guys look at them for a second and say, in a balloon. And say, oh, okay, thank you. They fly away, and then one of the physicists tell you, that guy was a mathematician. How'd you know? Well, what he said is true, but useless.
Take that, mathematicians.
With all due respect to mathematicians,
of course,
right? Because I consider myself a like amateur mathematician, right? But it's a funny. I like self-deprecating humor too. So it sometimes it's true. Yeah, things are true, but nobody cares, right? But
you passed the test. Congratulations. That's a good joke. It is amazing. Still, I'm hunting good AI jokes. I'll see if I can do for quantum. I think we're running out of time at the moment. I won't ask what that means at the quantum level.
Well, I mean, we're probably running out of time and just starting at the same time.
Oh man, this is awesome. So we'll have the quantum podcast, and I'll see you back then in time. But I want to thank you, first of all, for taking the time to talk to us today. Thank you for being so cogent and clear about what you do and why you do it. You know, the thing about ISI I've discovered is we are a collection of these really interesting people from very different perspectives and disciplines. And yet, every time I've talked to someone from a clearly very different perspective and discipline than mine, there are so many things in common. I really think that is fairly unique at ISI. So I both understand why you're here, and I also thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me here. I mean, it's a lot of fun to talk about these things. I really enjoy it, and anytime that anybody wants to discuss quantum, I can go on sometimes a lot.
We got you. All right. Well, thanks, Federico. I really appreciate it. And, quantum on.
Yeah. Thank you, Adam.
All right. If you enjoy these short podcasts, please do what really only you can do. Rate us, score us, evaluate us, grade us, give us feedback, subscribe, spread the word, offer up questions you'd like me to ask, maybe even give us a joke or two. And of course, just keep listening and learning. And join us, please, for another episode of ISI Insiders, where we're going to keep exploring, we're going to keep learning, and we're going to keep humanizing all this tech to help us navigate our way through this weird, weird world. Trying to do what humans can do best when they face these kinds of challenges. Working together as if all our lives depend on each other. Because they do. So for now, and for the future, fight on.